This is a cricket podcast.
All comes down to the final on Sunday night. Oh, I'm so excited. I love a World Cup.
Two mates obsessed with the game.
You know, you've got the best, in my opinion, the best two bowling attacks tomorrow night going up against one another.
Covering all the on-field action.
Before we kick into semi-finals, let's just have a moment of silence for Australia.
Not at all.
This is the Back of a Length podcast.
Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of our second season of the Back of a Length podcast. My name is Renee. Usually I have Mark alongside me, but he is still in England, so I have roped in another cricket fanatic. Hello, Brendan.
Hello, Renee. Great to be on the show.
And we have had some good times together. So I thought we are going to talk about the T20 World Cup today, but our friendship started really at the 2019 ODI World Cup in England at Old Trafford.
It did. Great memories. What a match.
What a match. We've talked about this match so many times, Mark and I, because not only was it a great match, but it was a great time, because we always say we had like 5 of us in the front row of that down by the sidelines, just abusing the players. I think.
Yes, very much. Yeah. No, I recall that evening. Great memories. Very balmy night, which is, I guess, rare for Manchester. It's usually pretty overcast and quite cold. And a number of the other games I attended during that World Cup up there were exactly that. That was the one standout where the weather came right and the cricket was just on point. And it was great to sit with yourself and, of course, Mark, and enjoy what was a very stressful game of cricket, but we ended up on the right side of it. And, I think that actually was a really important game for our boys, the Black Caps, to continue their group stage progression ultimately all the way to that final.
And speaking of that final, very quickly, you were there.
I was, yes.
Oh.
14th of July, 2019. I still got the date.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was quite a journey to get to that to Lords. What a day, what a memory. I don't think there'll ever be really another game of cricket like it. But yeah, very, very difficult at the end. But at the same time, just a great memory. Awesome crowd. Just probably the greatest memory actually wasn't in the ground. It was actually on the underground at St John's, heading back over to Lewisham and South London, and just all of the people, all of the Poms on the train, not really sure how to approach me really. They were consoling me, they were congratulating me, it was a very unusual experience, but one that I'll certainly remember.
That's amazing. What a cool story. Right, let's have a look at the men's current World Cup. The T20 World Cup is still going in Australia. We've wrapped up all the pool games and some interesting results. So let's start with Pool 1. New Zealand winning their pool.
I know, fantastic. I think New Zealand, I think we just started the tournament with that fantastic, game against Australia. It really set our campaign on the right mark. Just think that, our top order batsmen have really fired, but equally, in our bowling stocks, it's been great to see our fast bowlers perform, but equally the likes of Satner also, keeping that economy rate down, looking to take wickets at real opportune moments against the opposition. It was great to see us, finish off Ireland, finish top of the pool. It does set us, I think, in a really good position for Wednesday night semi.
Yeah, absolutely. So we said going into the World Cup, we were like, this is an incredibly strong team on paper, but they've had a bit of form, some injuries, lacking that oomph, and then they came out from game 1, as you said, and just went crazy. Like, didn't matter it was a World Cup, didn't matter they have demons in Australia. They went, absolutely guns blazing. And touch wood, no injuries to the team now that Daryl Mitchell has returned.
Absolutely, and I think that's so important. Just when you get into the real busy end of the tournament, it's great to have a full squad to choose from, and I think that will, position us really well tomorrow night when we, have a look at that pitch, and we're able to, assess the conditions. It's just great for Kane and the team to kind of work out their best 11 based on those conditions and not have to be worried about who's injured and who's not.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Kane Williamson, he's had so many critics this World Cup. Just go away.
How can you not? I mean, Kane is Kane. He needs to be there. He knows pressure games. Let's be fair. The Black Caps have made so many semis and finals. He's integral for the squad. He's integral for the team. Critics can, as far as I'm concerned, they can piss off.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, he came right against Ireland. He got a strike rate up to about 170. And as I keep trying to say to people, I know T20 cricket is this explosive, fun thing, but you still have to face 120 balls as a team, and you've got between your power play ending and your over sort of 12-13 where you start to try to go big, it's quite a lot of game where you have to just rotate the strike, put away the bad balls, and make sure you're going into those final overs with still 5, 6, 7 wickets in hand, and that is what Kane Williamson's job is.
I couldn't agree more. Renee, you're spot on there. I think when you think about Finn Allen and the likes of Glenn Phillips, they're our fireworks, right? They're the ones that go out there and they have the license. But Kane is our anchor. And to your point, he's there to rotate the strike, ensure that the innings has good momentum. If we are losing regular wickets, which I think, we could look back on that Sri Lanka game, and that was probably the one game in the campaign to date where at 15 for 3, we were really struggling. And, if we find ourselves in a position like that, potentially against Pakistan, that is when you need your Kane. Be patient at the crease, rotate that strike, get the innings back on track, and make sure that we've still got some hard-hitting batsmen coming in from that 15th, 16th over to the death. And I couldn't agree more with what you're saying.
I just love this lineup of the New Zealand team at the moment. You go big hitter, Devon Conway accumulates, Kane comes and rotates the strike, Phillips, Neesham, Mitchell come in, and then you go into your bowlers who, when they come into bowl, are just going absolutely bonkers. Let's firstly just quickly mention Lockie Ferguson coming off injury and bowling absolutely heat down the crease, and then Bolt and Southey just doing what they do.
Absolutely. I mean, I just can't wait for tomorrow. Pakistan and New Zealand, we've probably got the quickest fast bowlers at the moment, aside from Mark Wood, who's, of course, with England. I think tomorrow night is just going to be incredible to see, Bolt, Southey, Ferguson go up against Babar and, Rizwan. And then you look at, the Pakistan bowling stocks, and I mean, Afridi's just, he's incredible to watch, and he equally is able to swing the ball. He sends it down at pace. You've got the best, in my opinion, the best two bowling attacks tomorrow night going up against one another. But I'm really stoked for Fergie. I mean, it's been a tough few months for him. I think what has been so fantastic about the tournament so far in Australia is that for probably the first time seeing the fast bowlers actually have the ascendancy over spin, which of course in previous World Cups, and I think just in T20 generally, the spin kings take the throne, and the fast bowlers, they usually are left to the death and they get pounded for 10, maybe even 15 runs and over. We're not really seeing that in this World Cup. We're seeing some really good fast bowling, which is pleasing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Mark Wood there. So let's take a look at England, who finished second in the pool. And I have some stats here. Mark Wood, we said before we went into this World Cup, he will go hard, he will bowl fast. He's bowled 4 deliveries over 154k and 3 deliveries over 153k in this tournament. Just
Lightning.
Nuts. Lightning. Oh.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Sean Tate would be impressed with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think I watched him in Perth, I think it was. It might have the wrong venue. Pretty sure it was Perth. And I saw him get above 150, and Dirk Nannes was commentating at the time. Of course, in his heyday, he was extraordinarily fast. And I think it's great to see, as I say, never mind ourselves in Pakistan, but it's great to see England. There's a couple of quite good fast bowlers, unfortunately, in South Africa, which won't be joining us in the semis. But it's great to see some really good, strong fast bowlers coming through in T20 cricket.
Yeah, definitely. I know Mark is very happy that England have made the semi-finals, so he was over there gloating. Sure. He messages me and gloats all the time. So he's a big fan of Ben Stokes. So he said Ben Stokes had a great World Cup so far. Liam Livingstone comes in that middle order and basically kicks off.
What I really liked about England was just their brutal. They were brutal against our boys in Brisbane.
Yes.
I think.
Wow.
It's quite clear. I think from my perspective, they were, particularly Joss Buttler and Alex Hales up the top of their order were given the license at the Gabba. Go hard. Take on Bolt, take on Southey, take on Ferguson, get the runs on the board. It's a 180-run track. Make the most of it. And I think giving those players that freedom allowed Buttler to really open up. It was great to see Hales really have a good innings. Since he'd returned to the England setup, he'd been a bit hit and miss and, hadn't really been able to find, good form. And I think, those two against, in my opinion, a substandard Indian attack. In the semi, India will really have to watch those two, particularly if they win the toss and elect to bat at Adelaide. Yeah, be interesting to watch.
Yeah, that will be a good semi-finals. So, before we kick into semi-finals, let's just have a moment of silence for Australia.
Not at all.
Okay, not making the semi-finals, come in third, and because of net run rate. So we said going into this, Australia have an incredible team, but 4 weeks out of the World Cup, they felt really overcooked, unsure of their lineup.
Agreed. Absolutely. And look, I think you're right there. Australia just weren't able to land on their best 11. They, were mucking around with, their supposed top 11 pre-World Cup when they had games against the West Indies as well as England. And, I just think, Aaron Finch is unfortunately a man very much out of form. That was evident in the Chappell Hadley series and ultimately led to his retirement in the one-day game. I honestly don't know if Aaron Finch has really got it anymore, both as a captain but equally as a batsman that can really change a game. I know his record is incredible, and he's played cricket right around the world, and he's done a great service for the Aussies. But I just would not have gone into this World Cup campaign with him as captain and with him even in the 11, if I can be completely honest. I would also say the same for Warner. Dave Warner is another, batsman that has been, out of form. Not a lot of cricket, to be fair to him, I guess, but unfortunately just has not been finding good form, and I think that's really stunted Australia's batting progress.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just on that opening pair, I think what Australia didn't do was what New Zealand did do and had the guts to say, Martin Guptill, you are unbelievably
right.
talented, but Finn Allen is actually the person we need, and we're going to back him, and we'll take Martin Guptill to the World Cup, and I'm sure they're using his experience, but reality is that Finn Allen needs to be the person in, and that Australia didn't have the guts to do that and say, Finch or Warner, you're out, Cam Green is in.
And the irony is that Finn Allen went flat out against Aussie. So there you go.
There you go.
It was that Sydney game, wasn't it, when he really, put his name on World Cricket's map. Yeah.
Right, so that is Pool A. Sri Lanka took 2 wins in the Pool A. Memorable win for Ireland over England, just to rub that in again, Mark. No wins for Afghanistan, which was very disappointing. Yes. Rashid Khan had a decent tournament. He gave a good run for his money against Australia, ultimately coming up short. Then
great with the bat.
Actually, yes.
He's, I can see why he was drafted in the Big Bash as number 1, because, if you look at his tenure, in just the last 3 years, his batting has just become amazing. He'd be good as a pinch hitter in franchise cricket, I wouldn't be surprised if the strikers, put him right up the top as a pinch hitter in some of their games in the Big Bash. I mean, he can really find the middle of the ball now. Never mind taking wickets and basically, keeping a typical over under 6 runs. He's that kind of character. I mean, he can come out with the bat and those 30, 40, even 50 runs that he can pile on. What an absolute all-rounder he's becoming.
Yeah.
But disappointed for Afghanistan, I think. A great tournament for them in terms of their squad. Very young team there. And, I think that they'll, take that experience forward. And I just hope that they continue to get good opportunities against full member nations going forward.
Yeah, I absolutely hope so too. I'm sure we'll see tours against Afghanistan in the future from all these top playing nations. Let's take a look at Pool B. India won their pool. A hugely experienced team, but did feel a bit average going into the World Cup. They just beat Pakistan. They beat Bangladesh by the DLS method, a little bit controversially, and they did lose to South Africa.
Yeah, so I think India came into their campaign similar to Australia, where they were still trying to suss out their best 11. I think the Asia Cup was a bit underwhelming for them. And it's kind of hard to believe Sri Lanka ended up winning that when you look at how things have gone, in Australia. But however, look, I think, it's been a interesting group stage for them. A loss to South Africa, a very close one against Pakistan. Of course, they were impacted by rain, as many teams were. But I do think, that game against Zimbabwe just on Sunday night, it was great to see Rahul at the top really take it to the Zimbabwean bowlers. And, of course, Kohli's been, wonderful return to form from him. And I think that just shows his masterclass. You can't beat someone down for too long. I think we always knew Kohli was going to come back, and he always chooses the big stage to do that. But, interestingly, Rohit, who is, of course, their captain, I think has been quite quiet. I think that's, something that the English can perhaps really focus and hone in on. I think that is... He does look to be out of form, and I'm not so sure he's making the right decisions in the field either. It is interesting if you look at, a lot of the... language between the Indians on the field. They're looking at Kohli, they're looking at, Pant behind the wicket, and they're not necessarily actually taking much instruction off Sharma, which is quite interesting. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting semi. The pressure is on for them, of course. Interestingly, even just against Zimbabwe, they had 88,000 people at the MCG. I mean, it's just incredible just how they turn out for their team, and I just think that's just terrific to see. I mean, 2019 Cricket World Cup, I don't know how I got into that semi-final at Old Trafford against India. Right, I must have been one of the very, very few Kiwis. It's just incredible the intensity of their fans, and they just bring so much colour. And I think that's been one of the great. I just love India playing cricket at World Cups because it just lights up the whole tournament.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and that will be such an interesting semi-final. But speaking of passionate fans, Pakistan also have an incredibly passionate fan base. So going into the World Cup, I said Pakistan, they have the best opening partnership in the tournament.
Well,
I think I was proved wrong.
Well, I think, that was a very fair comment to make, because you look at Rizwan and Baba, particularly during the Asia Cup, even in the Tri-Series, as a warm-up between that Asia Cup and of course, the World Cup starting. I mean, and games earlier in the year too. I mean, they've just been outstanding. I think both have made well over 1,000 runs in the calendar year, which is remarkable. But yeah, to your point, they haven't fired, and I'm a little bit concerned because they may just do that tomorrow at the SCG.
Yes, they may. So their best performance was the last game against Bangladesh. 57 was their opening partnership. The rest of them were like well under, probably 10 or 20. They do have quite a good second wicket partnership, which they have formed. But what I will say is that the person coming in third has been a different player nearly every game. So I'm not quite sure Pakistan know their best lineup.
I agree. And look, there's how many Mohammeds? We've got Mohammed Nawaz, we've got Mohammed Haris, and I think they have been, flipping certainly the Mohammeds around. But yeah, I think they're probably lucky they're there, and they're probably thinking that too. I mean, after that remarkable upset by the Dutch yesterday over the South Africans, I mean, they possibly were mentally going, we're kind of on our way out here, and then we're pleasantly, of course, surprised, and now they find themselves in the semis. They're possibly that is the Pakistan way of cricket, isn't it? 1 minute they're playing one mode of cricket, and then the next day they're winning, and it's their story, isn't it? It's just Pakistan cricket to a T. But I do think like a semi-final against New Zealand, Babar, he's a world-class cricketer. He's proven in many big games that he can step up. Rizwan, has got the experience. He's been at the top of the Pakistani order for a number of years. If there's anyone that can take on the likes of Bolt and Ferguson, it's him. And I think equally in their bowling stocks are, as we alluded to earlier, Afridi's just mind-boggling. I mean, it's just fantastic to see him bowl. I mean, it's remarkable how he can swing the ball at pace.
Let's just quickly touch on the rest of this pool before we take a little bit more of a look into the semi-finals, because I want to talk about South Africa. I said, this is a shambles of a team with some big hitters. I mean, I'm pretty stoked that I had a prediction come true.
Yes. Yeah. Look, South Africa need to go back to the drawing board. There's a lot to, I think, look at with South Africa. You
feel really sorry for them because Riley Rossouw had a century in there. You had a great partnership between Markham and Miller, both of them scoring over 50. They had some great bowling, Wayne Parnell and Nokia put on some good performances, but it's always just one player will have a good game and then the next player will be someone else, and they just cannot work as a team.
I agree. And I think that starts with the captain. Bavuma needs to go, and that's quite a statement. But a bit like Finch, he's just not there. It doesn't look like he's got the support of the squad.
No.
And his own form is, in my opinion, has been, well, I'm not actually sure why he's in the team, if I can be completely honest. He hasn't done much with the bat. He was passed in at their franchise auction, the South Africa franchise auction. Wasn't even selected. This is the captain of South Africa. I mean, if that kind of doesn't give some warning bells, I'm not sure. But you've got some other really, quite experienced cricketers that have done next to nothing in this campaign. Quinton de Kock is one for me.
He's disappointing.
Very, very disappointing. Was absolutely cleaned up by Afridi in the Pakistan match the other day for a duck.
I was watching that. I was like, does Quinton de Kock even want to be there?
Yeah, and that's the question that I think South Africa cricket need to ask of their men, because looking at that squad walk off the Adelaide Oval yesterday, I think there's big questions there, and that body language is, I'd be quite concerned. I do feel for Riley Rossouw, standout cricketer for me. I really do feel him and Rabada and Ngidi are probably the three. There wouldn't be many more that put together some good performances. The rest of them were just there to make up numbers, and I think that's just quite blunt but quite true from my perspective.
No, I think they need to go find their Graham Smith of this century or this decade.
Agreed.
Turn their team round.
Absolutely right.
But because South Africa lost, the Netherlands won. The Netherlands beat them. they come fourth in their pool out of nowhere, and they qualify straight into the top 8 for the next tournament. So massive shout out to the Netherlands.
Very exciting.
And your mate.
Yes. Logan played in most of the games. Absolutely stoked. So for those that may not know, I had a number of yarns with Logan van Beek throughout the 2019 Cricket World Cup in England and Wales. It was just so that we ended up sitting in the same stand at Edgbaston and Old Trafford, at Lords even. So yeah, it was great to see huge celebrations from the Dutch, and great to see the likes of Logan and Max O'Dowd celebrate. I think for them to go to the next World Cup in I think it's the West Indies and also America, isn't it?
I believe so.
And not having to play those qualifiers is just fantastic. It demonstrates Dutch cricket, along with Irish cricket, I'd have to say, Renee, really transcending from that associate nation to that kind of full member, playing with the big boys.
So just to round out Pool B, we had Bangladesh coming in 5th. A little bit disappointing, but to be honest, not really expecting much from Bangladesh there. And lovely to have Zimbabwe.
Yeah, I think, look, Bangladesh, I was disappointed with Shakib. I think the pressure on Shakib is huge, of course. He's played in every World Cup since the inaugural tournament in 2007. He had a wonderful one-day World Cup in England. I remember watching Bangladesh in many different venues across England, and he was just performing like crazy. I mean, he was hitting half centuries. He took 5 wickets in Southampton against Afghanistan. Remember that day very well. He was at his prime, but I just think it's disappointing he didn't really fire for Bangladesh in this campaign. That said, there's been some other players in Bangladesh that I felt did step up. Lilton Das at the top of their order.
I think great Lilton Das.
Yeah, I think he's a fantastic find, and somebody had to replace Tama McBell at some point. I think they found him. I think they're, Bangladesh, one of those teams that, again, they need to, just keep finding good young cricketers and stick with them. Give them opportunities, give them time, and they'll be, as they're well known to be, giant killers in the next tournament, I'm sure.
Right, so it all comes down to the semi-finals. New Zealand, Pakistan. I'm already nervous. What do New Zealand do to win it?
Bat first,
yeah,
180.
Bat first. Yeah, bat first. That's what I said. I said bat first. New Zealand has to bat first. They have to play their game. Finn Allen has to go in and go crazy. Conway comes in with Williamson, as we've said, and then Phillips can go bonkers at the end with maybe a cameo from Neesham. You almost want a repeat of the SCG.
Yes, you do. And look, it's been a great hunting ground. I mean, yes, the SCG prior to this campaign has not been great for New Zealand. I remember we played a test match there, didn't we, where we put out 5 wicketkeepers just a few years ago, and that was disastrous. I think great win against Australia, and that Sri Lanka game tested our batting stocks. We were 15 for 3. Phillips came in and just played an absolute beast of an innings, one for the ages, in my opinion. It's been a good hunting ground. We'll take that mentally into tomorrow night's game. The toss is important. There's no doubt. If we bat first, yes, we're going to be up against, and I've mentioned him so many times because I'm just so impressed by his bowling, but look, we're going to have to see out Afridi. He's a huge strike bowler, and I just hope that we don't come running down the wicket 4-1 and play a rash stroke. I think many of your listeners will know what I'm alluding to there. But sense and sensibility. But where there's the bad ball, take it out. Have a really positive power play. And as we've said, this is the opportunity for Conway and Williamson to anchor those two power players in Phillips and in Allen. And if we get to the 15th over, and we're up around that 110 mark, there's no reason why we can't chuck that 50, 70 on to get up to that 180. And it's interesting that, for me, that psychological difference in the total, if you get up to 180, it feels like a lot more than the 160, the 150, 160, which is if you look at the tournament to date and the group stage games, a lot of the totals have been around that 150, 160. But if you get up to that 180, it's just that those additional 20 runs that really puts that pressure on, that chasing team. And if we can get to that 180, I think we're in a bloody good position with our bowling team to take Pakistan out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think putting Pakistan into that second will be better for us because Pakistan may crumble under pressure. They lost to Zimbabwe in the final over when the batters basically lost their mind and got run out. So if we can put pressure on them batting second, I think New Zealand, maybe we can go back-to-back World Cup finals.
Yes, and I guess the question for you, Renee, what happens if we don't bat first? How do we go about it?
I think that bowling will be okay because you've still got so much experience in that lineup with Bolt, Southey, Ferguson, and then Sodhi and Santner coming in later. I think it's more that top order, and they just need to remain calm for as long as possible. And it felt like in England, against England at the Gabba, Finn Allen and maybe even Devon Conway just didn't really know how to approach the chase because they haven't had to approach a chase.
Yes.
So I think this is where Williamson again will come in handy and be able to guide them through because, assuming Finn Allen will go really big, he'll probably stick around for 5, 6, 7 overs. And then you've got Williamson to just take you through it, remain calm and chase it down because all that matters is winning. You can win with 1 ball, 10 balls spare. You've got to win.
Absolutely.
Thursday night, England, India. Mark says
Huge.
England has this in the bag.
Oof. Of course he does. Well, look, it's a pressure cooker game, isn't it, for India? And, India do trip up. As of course New Zealand has. We've exited many semi-finals ourselves, but I think for India, boy, it's that pressure that I spoke about earlier. And I really do like this England team. I've said that even before the World Cup started. Those warm-up games against Australia, there was a particular game in Perth, and as I say, Hales and Butler put on 100 runs opening stand at that new Perth Stadium. Once more, I think it comes down to the toss. And I think, the Adelaide pitch was an interesting one. Some of the totals have been a bit lower than I expected for Adelaide. The boundaries are quite short there, and usually you can get one over the ropes a bit easier there than say the SCG or the Gabba, and of course the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which is huge. So I think I can't pick this one. I really can't. I think if Rohit finally fires, that's huge. I mean, he's one of the world's best T20 players. Kohli's been in great form. Rahul came right against Zimbabwe. Also had Yadav hit a very fast 50 against Zimbabwe. So really, you could say all of their top batsmen have had some good innings, and they'll put pressure on those English bowlers. But Wood's been fantastic, and Livingston's been obviously a great support to Curran, who of course has taken the only 5-wicket bag in the entire tournament.
Curran's had a great tournament.
He's had a fantastic tournament, and then you've got, of course, similar to Santner and Ish Sodhi for us in our squad. The English have got Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid. And that's 8 overs between them that can really slow the Indian pace down. So, yeah, it's going to be a really fascinating game, that one.
Yeah, so Wednesday night semi-final 1, Thursday night semi-final 2. It all comes down to the final on Sunday night. So remember, you can always find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Back of a Length. So, Brendan, great to have you on here on the podcast. I'm sure, as you know, we always finish with our first 11 of the week.
Here we go.
So, this was a first 11, this one I've compiled. Now, Richard, who was our special guest 2 weeks ago, asked to do this one. And I said, I've already got this. And I had thought about you, Brendan, because you were such an instrumental person in putting this First 11 book together. A lot of the suggestions are from you.
I'll remember.
And what I do remember is I went away from where we first started doing this book at the New Zealand-Pakistan test match down at the Bay Oval in 2020-2021. I went and filled it in, and then I gave you the book at a Super Smash, and I was flicking through, watching Super Smash, and then I just hear you start cackling. At this, that was the exact noise at this First 11. So I've brought it out in honour of you. This
Alrighty.
is the First 11 of 2 first names.
Oh, here we go.
So in at 1, in at 1 we have Lou Vincent, in at 2 Michael Vaughan, in at 3 Ross Taylor, in at 4 Jason Roy, 5 Hamish Marshall, 6 Grant Elliott, 7 Alex Carey, 8 is Matthew Hayden, current batting coach of Pakistan, so maybe we'll see his team fire this week. 9 Mark Craig, 10 Alan Donald, 11 Chris Martin, and then 12th man, because we had so many, we've gone Fabian Allen, and then of course on water duty is Matt Henry.
Oh yes, of course. Gee, I hadn't heard the name Mark Craig for a while. There you go.
Here you go. Yes, Richard wanted Tim David to be in this list, but we'd already made it. We could also put Finn Allen in there.
Yeah, there's a few new additions over the last couple of seasons. Yeah,
yes,
I'm not sure what Matty Hayden's doing so far down the order. We might have to throw him up with old Lou Vincent.
That's actually a very good point. He was an opening batsman. Okay, that is the podcast. That is our lead-in into the T20 World Cup final stages next week. Firstly, Mark should be back as long as he doesn't get stranded in England, and we will be able to talk through the winner. But for now, Brendan, thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Great to be on.
As always, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at Back of the Link. Until next time, up the Black Caps, we will see you next week.